Okay, well, I figure it's 1 minute past, so we're going to get started. I welcome my co-presenters to they can turn on their cameras now and wave and say hey to everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, the State of the Industry October update. We've been, this is, I believe, our sixth update webinar since early in 2020, and it's proved to be a really awesome, informative series that continues to come back by popular demand, and we're happy to be here again. The current state of manufacturing has really caused widespread concern and economic hardship for everybody, from customers to businesses and communities. The situation is fast moving with widespread impacts. And one thing is for certain is that it is having global economic and financial ramifications that will be felt throughout the industry as a whole. So how have these changes affected near-term global manufacturing supply chain today? How will it continue to be affected moving forward? How do we reshape and rebuild an industry both more sustainable and resilient for the future? In times like these, it's really never been more important to harness the power of data to inform us of what is happening, and most importantly, what we can do to help protect the lives, the livelihoods of the communities and the industries around the world that we partake in. And in this State of the Industry, we'll be exploring these issues using unique data sets that illustrate the impact of various elements of the economy on the manufacturing industry. And despite the inherent monetary value of the data that both the companies presented today collect, we both believe that as organizations, we have the opportunity and the duty to democratize this data to help empower informed decisions that may help shape the future of the manufacturing community. So that's my little introduction for today. My name is Graham Immerman, and I will be your host and moderator for this panel. We couldn't be any more lucky to have our two panelists today. We have Zhang, Chief Data Scientist at MachineMetrics, as well as Jerry Foster, Chief Technology Officer for Plex. Give everybody a wave, guys. Thank you guys both for generously offering your time to participate in this again. No problem. Quick agenda here. We're going to do a brief MachineMetrics introduction, followed by the two company presentations. We'll then follow with questions and a Q&A, and talk a little bit about what's coming next. But before we get started, just a couple notes for you to know that this webinar is indeed being recorded, and we will send out a link after. So anybody who has to leave early or something like that, fear not, you will get a recording. And questions are always welcome. So there are two ways that you can deliver questions. The first is in real time, and you can use the chat window. Our panelists and myself will be there to help answer any questions and just discourse. You're welcome to also discuss the topics and anything that's happening with yourselves as the event does unfold and occur. The next way is through the Q&A section in the Zoom navigation. You can ask a question anytime. Sometimes those questions will be answered in real time. Sometimes those questions will be saved for the Q&A. We'll do our best to get to as many of them as we can. I do want to make a quick note. We do have people in attendance today from all over the world. It's really cool to see these type of things that allow us to come together, even in a day where it feels like we're all separated at our houses. Through events like this, we can all come together, share information, and that, I think that's really cool. So thank you all for coming. I'm going to skip this and just go to the next thing. At this critical time, we are continuing our response program for COVID-19, offering free access to our platform to any manufacturer involved with the production of ventilator parts, test equipment, protective equipment, or any COVID-19 related manufacturing support. feel free to check us out at machinemetrics.com/COVID-19 response and take a look at that program. I think it's really cool. And we've been involved with another number of manufacturers that have leveraged this technology to enable social distancing and continued automation and support on the factory floor in a time where it's really never been more difficult. So, I'm just going to do a very quick overview for those of you that may not know who we are, and then I'm going to dive right into the presentations today. So, a bit about MachineMetrics. We are manufacturing's industrial IoT platform for machines. So, MachineMetrics is really accelerating industrial transformation for factories by providing an intuitive and flexible platform to easily collect data from any piece of manufacturing equipment and transform that data into powerful, actionable apps for factory workers. The objective of reducing machine downtime, optimizing capacity, and driving increased throughput and profitability for factories. Right now, we do have hundreds of manufacturers that have connected thousands of machines to our platform across global factories to significantly expedite their time to value for Industry 4.0 implementations by harnessing the power of machine data to drive immediate actionability on that data. Oh, let me get back to that. The MachineMetrics platform is easy to install and implement. You'll start visualizing your performance from anywhere in a matter of minutes or even hours. Plug and play edge connectivity harnesses and standardizes that machine data across your fleet. In simplifying that machine data collection and transformation, we're able to provide a truly scalable solution that for our customers can easily install themselves without MachineMetrics ever having to actually come on site. Something that's been really useful for manufacturers in this time as they've been trying to harness data from their factory floors across the world. That data is then immediately available in our multi-tenant cloud platform, which leverages a custom infrastructure designed to make that data immediately usable through instant analytics, insights, customizable rules-based workflows for any shop floor data item. That data is then available from anywhere, anytime, from a secure location. And then lastly, our intuitive out-of-the-box apps are easy to use and drive rapid improvements in efficiency with minimal training. Real-time shop floor dashboards, machine production, condition monitoring, historical reporting, bottleneck identification, predictive tooling and maintenance apps, text email notifications that deliver optimized processes to factory workers. You can also build your own apps, seamlessly connect with your current shop floor systems to easily integrate that machine data across your digital factory. And I think, this is really the cool part that we're seeing, in this time is that, using data on the shop floor, right, is really just the beginning. Once you're able to harness machine data and what we call the machine data digital thread, opportunities for enabling automation are truly endless, from driving maintenance, quality, production design, and logistics systems like ERP, for example, with real-time data and analytics, to automating supply chain, materials, tooling, resources ordering, to receiving faster customized service and support from your machine and component providers, to providing greater transparency and traceability to your customers. Once you're able to harness that data, the opportunities for automation are truly endless. And this is what we call manufacturing 4.0. And we're really excited to be one of those companies like Plex, right, driving the automated factory of the future. But enough about me. Let's get to the main event here. I now invite Lou, our chief data scientist, to share his screen, and he'll be our first presenter today. And Lou, please take it away.
All right, thanks for the introduction, Graham, and thank you everyone for attending. So as Graham said, this is our sixth State of the Industry this year. So a lot of you have seen me present our material. And today I really want to focus on one particular aspect of these presentations, which I've received a lot of questions on, which is data acquisition and a bit more transparency into how exactly the sausage gets made, so to say. So that's what the focus of the talk today is going to be about, in addition to the economic insights that we can get from our data. So as Graham said, we're an industrial IoT platform. So if you think about a machine shop, this is a machine shop of one of our customers. You can see that there's individual machine tools, and there's usually one operator per machine tool. But shop floor operators, before they install MachineMetrics, often don't know how many parts they've made on each machine. There's no way you can really tell unless you walk up to the machine and ask the guy or look at the panel itself. So this isn't great, because at the end of a manufacturing day, you might be 500 parts short, and you won't know until your operator tells you. So there's got to be a better way to do this, right? In fact, there is. So this is a cabinet, electrical cabinet of one of those machine tools. We actually do all the hard work for our customers. And what we do is we have an edge device and sometimes an IO device, depending on the machine. But we basically connect to the pre-existing Ethernet ports in these machine tool cabinets. And inside these nice green boxes here, what we do is we have a lot of just low level, usually C code. So these are basically communication protocols that we've written to be able to pull data directly off the machine. So we get really interesting things like, part counts and execution status and everything that you usually see on your HMI in front of you. So we basically scrape all this off, we vacuum it up to the cloud, and we aggregate it. For machines that don't have a modern PLC, we can actually just attach something called a current transducer and then pull the amperage patterns that are present on the machine itself to basically do the same thing to get part counts and execution status. So this is what our customers get. Each one of our machine shops usually has a nice big display like this, where they can see how many parts they've made, if their machine's on or off, if it's behind or ahead of their parts goal. They can pull in data from their ERP system and integrate it, whether it be SAP or something else. It's a really great way to track your factory's performance in real time, so you don't have to be blindsided at the end of the day. So we've been doing this for about 5 years, and this is what our customers get, right? But what do we get at MachineMetrics? So keep in mind here that we're a cloud-only platform. So we don't do any on-premise integrations. Everything is cloud by design. And that's because, in addition to our customers getting a lot of usage from their data, we also have this great, warehouse of data that we're sitting on. And we don't just pull execution status and part count and things like that. We also pull all of the operational data off the machine tool. So, for example, we can actually listen in on what each of these machines is doing at any time. So if you turn off your sound and hear this machine tool here, the way we do this is actually because we pull data at such high frequency that we can use some digital signal processing to actually be able to infer what the machine sounds like. So this is completely sensorless. This is with just the data coming off the PLC. That's a part being cut right there. And we can also listen to this machine over here. So what's this one sound like? So pretty cool stuff, right? The reason why I'm presenting this is because it really gets into how detailed our data actually is. We have petabytes of data from these machines that we're on right now. We don't just have sound. We can also look inside the machine tool cabinet, and we can actually see what people are manufacturing. So in this case, this is a firearms manufacturer, and we can actually see, what positions the machine is at and things like that. And then in addition to that, we collect such detailed data that, based off of the irregularities in machining, we can actually infer the outside temperature of where that machine shop is if they don't use too much AC. So basically we can see that based off of the amount of noise or the amount of instability on the spindle, it's directly correlated in this case with, one of our customers in Murphy, North Carolina. So again, why am I kind of going through all of this? Basically, it just goes to show the completeness and the detail of the data that we have. In addition, in front of every single one of these machines, we don't just collect data automatically, we also allow operators and machinists to be able to input information to contextualize that. So this is an operator tablet, and basically they can tell us, why a machine went down, or, why there was downtime, all sorts of interesting stuff. So we are basically cataloging all of this data. And at this point, we have about 66 million hours of machining time. So for every hour of machining time, obviously, we know how many milliseconds of in-cycle time there is, how many milliseconds the spindle is rotating, how long it's cutting, the number of parts produced, and this is all automatically extracted from the PLC itself through that Ethernet connection. In addition, the operator can input things like how many parts were rejected, how many parts were scrapped, and how many parts were non-conform. So my main job at MachineMetrics is actually to use this data to predict when machines are going to fail. So you can imagine that across thousands of machines, this is a really great data set to be able to basically tell when machines are going to fail and why they're going to fail, and also use that information to predict when other machines that are similar or under similar conditions may also fail. So over the past 5 years, we got this great data set, billions of parts that we've cataloged, tons of machines, hundreds of customer sites across the US. And it's a really powerful data set. So the reason why is because not only do we know all of this stuff, we basically have eyes and ears on thousands of machines across the US. So we can see what parts people are making. We can hear what those machines sound like. And we also have a vague sense of touch as well, because we can understand things like the temperature, or the basically we can infer things like the shop temperature and things like that from the data that we collect as well. So what I'm going to show today is just one of the applications of that, which is to basically look across all thousands of our machines, all of these couple of thousands of machines, and aggregate them together. When we do that, we have about a margin of error of about plus or minus 2%, based on an estimated market of about 3 million machine tools in the US. So that plus or minus 2% basically comes from a 95% confidence interval that, based off of our sample size, we should be within plus or minus 2% of what actual manufacturing utilization is. So you can see here that, first of all, manufacturing utilization is near about 25%, not 75, 80%, which is what has been previously reported. Remember, this is directly from the PLC without any sort of human corruption. So this is exactly how long people are running their G-code programs and running their machines for. So what we see is, these interesting trends. You can see when Easter is, you can see when Labor Day is, you can see when holidays are. But because of this interesting situation that we're in with the coronavirus, you can actually see how this year really differs from the other years too. So at the beginning of the year, we had about a 7% increase in utilization before the pandemic hit. And then there was an immediate 16% decrease. And then about an 8% increase from Easter on, which is when the recovery really started. So we can also look at this not only overall, but we can break it down by customer type. So remember, for each one of our customers, we have this edge device on their factory floor, and we know the location, we know who it belongs to. And we also belong to AMT, this industry association, and they help us do research sometimes to basically classify our data for us. So this is our approximate industry distribution. We're a little bit underrepresented in automotive and a little bit overrepresented in medical devices. This is just some slight error or bias that we might have. So for people who are doing more rigorous analysis and actually using our data for economic models, this is good to keep in mind. What we can do at this point is break down our data by industry. So we have 5 major industries that we track: aerospace, automotive, contract manufacturing, industrial machinery, and medical devices. There's a couple of interesting trends that immediately pop out here. One is that for automotive, at least, there's a sort of a V-shaped recovery going on. We're still a little bit lower than at the beginning of the year, but we're pretty much almost back to the way we were before at the beginning of the year. And you can see this in other aspects of the economy as well. So, you know, if you track the S&P 500 or you track other industries, you really see this sort of V-shaped recovery that's happening. For other industries like medical devices, they never really declined. And, you know, before they were in second place and now they're clearly in first place. And the reason why this happened is obviously because we have ventilator manufacturers and, you know, people who manufacture things that are in greater demand during a pandemic than before, which is why you actually see higher utilization for med devices than at the beginning of the year. There's some interesting trends going on down here as well for, you know, all these other industries. Essentially, our takeaway from this is that for the most part, industries are really starting to recover at this point. Some other interesting things that we can see, remember, we get very, very detailed utilization by the hour. So if we normalize the utilization and group it by hour of day, and we use actually the COVID risk groupings from the Federal Reserve. So in the first region, you have northeastern states like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. Second region, you know, Alabama, Arkansas, Arizona, and then third region is everything else. Essentially, and I noted that I labeled this with blue and red. That was completely by accident, but it's actually very topical given there's an election in a week. You can see that in these blue states, there's really evidence of staggered shifts. So by that, what we mean is you see that utilization actually shifts in terms of hourly distribution when the pandemic hits. So when the pandemic hits, people seem to be adding night shifts so that their workers are further spaced apart. While in these other regions, you really see no shift at all, pandemic or no pandemic. So it's just very interesting to kind of see these trends in our data. And this is just one of the interesting trends, but I don't want to take up too much time. If you guys have any questions about this, feel free to ask. Or if there's any specific insights that you guys are curious about, I'd be happy to address them. I don't want to take up too much time, so I will hand it over to Plex and Jerry. I guess it's off to you. So thank you very much for your time, everyone.
All right, thank you so much. Let me share my screen here. You guys seeing that?
Yep.
All right, good deal. So thank you so much, Graham and MachineMetrics, for putting this together. Again, this is my third time, I believe, with the crew giving our insight from Plex. And thank you, Lou, for that great insight. You know, I was born and raised here in Detroit Tiger fan. We had a famous second baseman named Lou Whitaker, and every time Lou did something good, the crowd would go, Lou. So every time I follow Lou in one of these things, I feel I want to say Lou, because it was such a really cool thing to see the insight and the data that MachineMetrics is putting together. So my name is Jerry Foster, and I'm the CTO and co-founder at Plex. I've been involved in manufacturing my entire career, and I love exploring that intersection between manufacturing and technology, and real passionate about leadership and culture and making all those things work inside of a manufacturing environment. So what does Plex do? We are a smart manufacturing platform. We provide everything that's necessary for a manufacturer to operate. We connect people and systems and machines and supply chains, and then track all that data and automate processes and put it all together for visibility and quality and control. And we were built in the cloud for manufacturers. We have a great uptime, 99.99% uptime for all of our customers around the world, 96% renewal rate. So we've just done a great job, in my opinion, of providing value for our manufacturing customers. We've got about 670 customers around the world in 29 countries. We handle about 8 billion transactions per day across all of our customers. And just for the sake of definition of transaction in this case would be any specific action that one of our customers would take, such as making a shipment or adding a GL ledger or creating a production record or measuring a tool with a gauge. Any one of those things is a transaction. And we handle about 8 billion of those transactions every single day. So we have a lot of scale across all of our customers as we have grown continually over the last 20 years. So we serve customers across the spectrum, from small and medium-sized businesses all the way up to enterprise level companies. We span multiple industries, and because of the cloud-based nature of our product, we can scale to manufacturers of any size. So that's myself and Plex in a nutshell. And the question you might be asking is, what have we done? What has Plex done to make us relevant to this particular conversation that so many people are having about the impact of COVID-19 on manufacturing? So as I said, we are completely cloud-based, and because of that, we have access to about 20 years of hardcore manufacturing data that's coming from our customers, as well as real-time information that we are gathering from their operations every second. So in addition to just helping our customers with the software that we provide, we're always asking, how can we help them even more with all of this data that we have? How can we provide some insight and some value? So we launched the COVID-19 Resource Center in March as a response to the uncertainty that was being generated by COVID-19. And we wanted to contribute and help our customers and manufacturers and analysts and the press to see what was actually happening around the world. There's lots of speculation and lots of people giving their opinions. And as Graham said at the beginning, we wanted to provide some value based on actual data that we are getting from all of our manufacturing customers around the world. So let's jump into the data. So what are we showing here? This is what we call production. This is a graph of production across all of our North American customers. And again, we can slice and dice this multiple different ways, by industry, by customer, by region, by continent, state. And so all of the data that I'm going to show you is just different ways that we have used to slice and dice the data. This is showing production. And what we mean by production is every time a container of parts fills up at a machine or a press, the operator creates a production record. So that could be a box of chocolates. It could be a bin of washers or a pallet of gears. Every time one of those things fills up, they create a production record. And so what we were able to do or wanted to do was find a metric that normalized the data directionally across all of our customers, because we have different size customers. They deal with different types of units and different size products. So we felt that actually recording and showing the number of production records that were being created was a metric that allowed us to show what was happening with COVID-19 across all of our customers. So when we last left our story in mid-August, as you can see here, we had shown that after the huge dip in the summer, based on when the pandemic hit, we had actually reached 100% of our pre-COVID levels there at the end of August. But as I said at the time, that wasn't entirely accurate, and because we were using marketing math. The actual number based on engineering math, which is the real numbers, was 99.6. So when we were here last time in August, we had seen that North American production had recovered to 99.6% of their pre-COVID levels. So the question is, did we really get past our pre-pandemic levels since then? And this is the data actually since that time up to the present week. And you can see we had a couple of weeks of flatness before actually hitting the Labor Day holiday. But then since the Labor Day holiday, we have North American production has increased significantly, where we actually hit 104%, went over that 100% number there on October 11th, and actually exceeded our pre-pandemic levels of production and activity. And for the last 2 weeks, it's been about the same. We're now currently at about 103% of our pre-COVID levels, and have been that way for a couple of weeks now. So, the clicker's not working here. There we go. But one of the questions, as we look at this graph again, one of the questions we have is that's kind of front of mind right now, and something that we're looking at is what is going to happen as it relates to the ongoing epidemic. And you can see here, I've superimposed on top the number of daily COVID-19 cases that are being diagnosed every day in North America. And you can see, even though we were going down in September, that number has started to increase again. And so the question that's in front of us is, how is that going to impact manufacturing going forward? Our customers are telling us that even though many of them are going at 110, 120, 130% of last year's production in order to fill in the gap that happened during the summer, they expect that to fall back to about 80 or 90% and level out at that level once they're caught up. But the question is, are they going to be forced to shut down again as cases rise? And what are the local governments going to do to compensate or try to stem the rise in COVID-19 cases? Or are they going to be able to make a case for running cleanly and virus-free? And so that's something obviously we don't know. There's still a lot of uncertainty ahead of us. And so we're going to be watching this closely as we go forward. Just diving down into a couple country-specific graphs. China's always an interesting story. You can see they were only shut down for about a week in February before they started a very strong recovery through March. But then they had a bit of a stall there in March and April. They kind of went down as some of the coronavirus cases started to increase. But then they recovered. And you can see since the summer, they've been on a really good clip, increasing their productivity since that time significantly, to the point now where they're at about 80% of their pre-COVID levels. And then, of course, we see here that the beginning of October, they have a couple of holidays that caused an impact in their production. But now they're recovering from that time. So it'll be interesting to see what happens as they're going forward. You know, we've been doing a lot of reading, and you may have as well, because obviously the economy of China is of always concern and interest to manufacturers around the world and here in North America. You know, China is the second largest economy in the world following the United States. And we just read some recent data from the International Monetary Fund that suggests, and they're predicting that China's economy is going to grow 1.9% this year in spite of the hit and what's happened with the coronavirus. Which is very interesting because they also estimate that the total global economy is going to shrink 4.4% this year. But in spite of that, China, they expect to actually do real well. So we're watching that closely. There's lots of talk, as you know, about reshoring and changing the supply chain and how it's going to affect China and other countries that are involved in the supply chain. Speaking of, Mexico is always an interesting study as well, taking a look at their curve and what happened to production in our Mexican customers. And you can see they've had they really haven't had any downtime or downturn since they've started the recovery in early summer. And they've been going at a really good clip. And they were one of the first customers, if I'm not mistaken, the first customer to actually exceed their pre-pandemic levels. And they actually hit just a couple of weeks ago 113% of their pre-pandemic levels. So they're just going like gangbusters. So it's interesting to see the success that Mexico is having right now. But there has been some uncertainty there as well as news comes out of Mexico of an increase in corona cases and some geopolitical issues. And so we're also going to be watching that closely as well. Another interesting take on the data that we like to look at is comparing this year to last year. And so what you see on the graph here is actually the blue, which shows our current production, which we've already been looking at a number of times. And then the orange is our production over the same time period last year. And you can see at the beginning of the year, before the pandemic hit, that our production this year was about 16% over last year. That just comes from growth and new customers. And then, of course, we had a huge gap in the summer when the pandemic hit. But then what's been interesting is since that time, you can see on the right that that production has started to normalize and look very similar to what our production looked like last year, albeit not as high for the most part, but it's starting to follow the same pattern, which is encouraging, leading to actually at the end of the year, or not at the end of the year, as of just this week, a gap between this year and last year of 14%, which is very close to the same gap that we started with in production before the pandemic hit. So that's another encouraging sign that we're seeing when we look at the data and what's happening to manufacturing. But now when you think of that gap, that huge gap of a number of weeks in the summer there, one of the things that we were asking ourselves is, what was the real world impact of the pandemic? What was the bite that was taken out of production right here? And so we thought, how can we determine that? How could we figure out what was the actual toll that the pandemic took on actual production for our customers? So we built an algorithm based on 2019 patterns showing what 2020 might have looked like had the pandemic not hit. It's sort of like a Star Trek movie reboot. If you don't like the story so far, we'll just create an alternate reality. So this teal line is that alternate reality. It's an estimation of what production should have been or could have been if the pandemic had not hit. And now based on that prediction or that estimation, I should say, we can actually do some math and replace that question mark with real numbers measuring the hit at different spots across the timeline. So the first place we decided to look at was at the end of June, which is on one hand kind of arbitrary, but on the other hand, it's the top side of the U-shaped recovery before that production starts to flatten a little bit. And so we thought, so we wanted to measure what is that gray area? What was the hit to production based on our estimate of what production would have been? And that's a 56% hit to production. That is staggering if you think about that, right? Almost 3/5 of the production just gone over the summer. So then we thought, okay, if we move the line a little bit to the right and maybe stick it at the end of August, what was the total lost production over that accumulated time period? And that's less, 41%, which is still huge though, but it's less than just the big gap in the middle of the summer. And then we took another measurement looking at what it was just as of last week. And we're back up to, I say back up to a 33% hit to production covering the whole time of the year since the pandemic started. So 33% is still huge, but it's a big gain over what happened in the summer when we were at a 56% hit to production. But if you think about it, this is significant. If you had told all of our customers at the beginning of the year, guess what? Here's all your projections. Here's all of your all your plans, and here's your sales projections. Now just take 1/3 of that right off the top. You can imagine what the reaction would have been, and of course that's the reaction that they're probably having right now as they try to figure out and respond to that in real time and in real life. So let's take a look at one of our particular industries, and we're going to look at a different kind of data right now, different kind of chart than the line charts we've been looking at before. We support multiple industries: aerospace and defense, electronics, food and beverage, automotive. Automotive is one of our strongest. So what we're seeing here is a comparison of a customer's pre-COVID production to a particular week since that time. So in this particular chart, what you're seeing here is a pair of orange and blue data points, and each pair represents one customer. And that pair represents, the orange represents their average weekly production before the pandemic hit. And then the blue represents the production that they were doing as of April 27th. And you can see for the vast majority of those automotive customers, and by the way, that's just a slice. If we showed all of our automotive customers, it would be too small to actually see. That's just a slice, and it's representative. But you can see that for most of our automotive customers, in the middle of April there, or at the end of April, they were hardly doing any production. The blues are very little. In fact, most of our automotive customers weren't doing any production. So just our automotive customers that were in essential businesses or maybe had converted to ventilators or protective equipment were doing in production. Now we compare that to just last week, and you can see a huge difference in how the data presents itself. And now you look at those orange-blue pairs, and you can see that for almost all of our automotive customers, they're doing more production and more activity than they were before the pandemic hit. Some of them significantly so. Now there's a couple exceptions that you can see there, but they're rare. There's only 3 or 4 of them there that aren't doing anything close to what they were doing before the pandemic. So this is another encouraging sign, at least as far as what's going on right now with our automotive industry, that most of our automotive customers are doing very well trying to catch up. And of course, right now they're playing catch up, trying to fill in the gap that happened this summer, that 56% hole that we saw. And of course, the question remains is how long is that going to last? How sustainable is that? And when will we return to more normal levels? One of the main points here that we always see is that manufacturers are incredibly resilient. So finally, I'm going to end with this. This is one of my favorite data sets. Now we're actually showing global production here, not the North American production. But using March 8 as a barometer, March 8 is the point at what we consider like the high point before the pandemic hit. It hit right there after March for most of the world. So using that data point as a high point, we wanted to measure production and the amount of active users using our system as a percentage of that high point. In other words, for each week, we took the number of production units and the number of workers and compared that to that high point, that high water mark on March 8th, and then calculated those as a percentage. And this allowed us to overlay those two different data sets on top of each other and have them show in relation to each other accurately and give us an interesting story. So you can see as we go through the summer there, you can see how the production tanked at the bottom. And of course, the number of active users went down significantly as well. But then we have this interesting point here in the middle of August, actually the end of July, where the percentage of production actually increases and crosses the percentage of users compared to March 8th. And then since that point, you can see how the percentage of production continues to increase at an extremely high clip compared to the percentage of actual users that are using the system, which is increasing but at a much flatter rate, resulting in a 10% gap between the production and the amount of workers as compared to the pre-pandemic numbers in March. And what that's telling us, and as you know, if you're a manufacturer, something I heard when I first stepped onto a factory floor 30 years ago was, we have to do more with less. We're being pushed to do more with less. We have to do more with less. And even when you think you can't do any more with any less, COVID comes along and manufacturers find a way to do more with less. And this, we can see right here, a 10% gap, 10% increase in productivity over the same number or over the equivalent number of users is significant. And again, we can see that as manufacturers doing what they have to do as they've always done to make things work. So it's always an encouraging story. This is one of my favorite graphs when I take a look here. So that's it. If you want to take a look at the Resource Center and the data and the charts that we publish either weekly or bi-weekly, depending on what we see from the data, there's the URL at the end that you can grab, or you can contact me offline and I'll get you that information. So that's all I have. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Great presentation, Jerry. And Lou, thank you so much as well. I couldn't help but reminded of my my childhood and going to Red Sox games and seeing Lou Merlone. Seems like everybody has a Lou from their childhood.
Exactly.
Yeah, now we have our own, and we're both definitely not children. So thank you guys so much for the awesome presentations. We did get a number of questions, so we're just going to start kind of taking those on now. A couple of them just about various solutions, and then a couple of them about the presentations. So I'm going to just quickly get to the ones about the presentations first. Rob, there was somebody who asked a question about how much of the data gap that you were showing there, Jerry, is due to increase in customer numbers or a number of machines, where we're collecting, or a number of customers we're collecting data from. Is that question could also be for Lou also? Is this this gap, I guess, in what Robert's asking, is increase in customer numbers or number of machines, or is the data already being normalized before we're kind of presenting these results?
So I would say that, and I'm not sure if we're talking about I showed two different gaps. One was the gap between production and the number of users, the active users, and the other was the gap between this year and last year. So I'm assuming he probably meant the gap between last year and this year. So we did get, obviously we have gotten new customers, so that's part of it, but in no way is that indicative of the whole gap. And my point for showing that graph was more to show just the shape and scale of the data between last year and this year was similar, was following more normal patterns instead of the huge fluctuations that we had seen earlier, and the huge gap, of course, in the summer. So just the fact that that data pattern was getting to a more normal level as we saw when compared to last year was kind of the main point of that graph. But definitely some of the gap is due to new customers, but not all of it, because as you've seen, not all of our customers are up and running 100% after the effects.
And then for ours, I would say, I think our margin of error last year was around 2.8%, and this year it's 2.2. So there's not much of a difference due to the increase in customers. I would just say that Statistically speaking, there was a significant decrease, and we can attribute it to this global macro event right here.
Yeah, some of our attendees were wondering whether or not that the increase in production might have been making up for the loss of production during the quarantine period.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that.
Sorry, forgive me. I didn't hear that answer, Jerry.
I was just saying, we're definitely seeing that the increase in the last 2 months is definitely making up for the gap, where there's a huge amount of pent-up demand. And there's some speculation that it'll continue even into 2021. But that remains to be seen. It's definitely right now, like we said, some of our customers are running 130% of where they were before the pandemic hit. That's not probably sustainable, and it's not going to be that way, but they're doing whatever they can to get as much out the door now and make up for that huge hit to production this summer.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to a follow-up question, there, which is, how does a manufacturer leverage data like this, right, to be useful for their business? For example, and I'll start with Lou and maybe go to Jerry. Obviously, both platforms, right, provide unique value, right, to the manufacturer in a number of different ways. But looking at the aggregate data, are there actionable decisions that can help them, that a manufacturer can take that can help them with their business planning? Lou, then Jerry, any thoughts around this?
Yeah, I would just say, we're in the 21st century now. We have all these great tools that we can use, whether it be IoT tools or more intelligent ways of automating processes, or even computer tools. So there's all of these great web apps that you can use right now to keep track of your business operation running more efficiently. I would say if you're still using pen and paper and storing things in manila folders, there's definite room for improvement there. There's tons of there's an explosion of technology that is going to make running businesses and even handling your own personal affairs a lot more streamlined and easier. So make sure to leverage those tools, whether it be MachineMetrics or Plex or anything else that you see. So I think in manufacturing, sometimes we get a little too myopic, or we might be a little too tunnel visioned on our machines, or just making sure the product gets out right. It's important to step back occasionally and see what else is out there for us.
Yeah, exactly. And what we're seeing is for our customers, when I put them in the context of the data I just showed, the value they're getting is actually what's underneath that data, because that's aggregated data and rolled up data. But that comes from the actual individual data points from each of our customers. So obviously for each of our customers, they're getting that data, but in the form of individualized and customer-based reports that they are using to run their business, and not just production, obviously everything across the board from shipping and receiving, OEE, everything that they can, all those different metrics that they can use to run their business. And then of course we roll it up. But even then, some of that is still useful to our customers, as they, I think, can use that to get a take on what's happening in the industry and the macro industry as a whole, and use that as maybe, okay, we're in the same boat. We are not abnormal in this regard. Even also looking at what's happening in various countries or continents or regions, and being able to make decisions on China versus Mexico and offshoring. That data can help them from an aggregate level make those decisions. And then of course, I think a lot of what I showed today is really valuable to analysts and press and industry personnel as they try to make decisions and report and show what's really happening. Because I think sometimes there's a lot of doom and gloom in general, and sometimes we need to offset that with real data that shows, hey, we're doing pretty well right now, all things considered.
Totally agreed, Jerry. It is quite interesting. We have seen some of our customers leverage data like this to make decisions, right? And I think I think that's the value, right? Sometimes it's decisions in real time, right? And sometimes it's planning decisions, right? And you look at a manufacturer that may be able to understand industry trend, and they may be able to say, manage supply chain, right, better. They may be able to make decisions on scheduling and hiring and resource planning, much more accurately if they have data that may be more indicative or even God help me, predictive of where the market is actually heading. So I think that type of information can be really helpful on the resource planning side of things, as well as the production planning side of things. And we're getting a bunch of questions coming in, so I'm going to try to take these as I can here. Well, this is a question I think for both of you can help with. First Lou, then Jerry. What is the average company size within the database that we're baselining and benchmarking against? And then maybe Jerry, you could take that on yourself.
Yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
No, go ahead. I'm thinking.
So I would say our distribution is bimodal. So we see two peaks. One is really with the small and medium-sized manufacturers. So these are your mom and pop job shops. They actually, according to the census, account for about 50% of the volume of manufacturing and 99% of the count of manufacturers in the US. So we have a big representation there on the SME side. And then we also have a pretty good representation on the large customer side. So these are some of the logos that I showed that you might have heard of, like Waters, Altec, Rossini. Like these are kind of tier one automotive or medical manufacturers. So you really see, taking an average would kind of be disingenuous here, because you really see those two groups kind of both represented pretty well within our customer base, at least.
Yeah, I would say that similarly, we have mom and pop customers all the way up through multi-billion-dollar international enterprises using Plex. So the customer base is distributed throughout that entire range, which is quite significant. I would say I don't have the actual numbers, but our sweet spot would probably be 100 to 500 million, that medium-sized business right in there. But we do appeal to customers across that entire range.
Yeah, interesting. Very similar sizes for both companies, actually. Okay, let's see. Here's a question that comes in more specific. Actually, looking at the exact opposite side of things. Looking at essentially decision making in the real time, right? How does MachineMetrics deal with machine data flow and from the physical machine interface, all the way back to the IoT system? And I think I'll just try to go as briefly as I can to provide an answer around this. But essentially, MachineMetrics largely gathers data directly from the control of the machine via our edge platform, which bypasses the need for additional sensors and complications involved with their installation to provide a scalable solution that can be self-installed by the customer. Our platform itself has dozens of custom software adapters that, when plugged in, automatically unlock, map out, collect, and standardize data points, like anything from internal sensors to machine statuses and modes and alarms, overrides, loads, feeds, speeds, diagnostic PMC parameters, and so on and so forth. From the physical side, right, to provide that plug and play solution, our edge platform runs on an inexpensive hardware device, which is like a small computer, if you will, that our customers seem to call the little green box. And that connects directly to the control system via Ethernet port. You can also install the platform on a local PC, and then you can add external sensors for additional data points, or even integrate that digital and analog I/O for either extremely complex equipment or legacy equipment that can be managed and coded through a web interface. And all that data is then instantly and securely streamed to the cloud via Ethernet, Wi-Fi, or cellular. So that, I think that at least is like a short answer from the physical point, the machine itself, through the hardware to the platform where it's now accessible from anywhere. If somebody wanted to dive deeper into that question specifically, they can reach out anytime to MachineMetrics, and we'd be more than happy to chat with that further. A couple other questions are coming in here, asking both of us if your main customer types are machine shops. I think, again, I don't mean to want to answer this for all of you, but I think if I would have to guess, both data sets are pretty diverse. I know MachineMetrics, for example, we're not just collecting data from, machine shops, but, we also work with some of the largest manufacturers in the world, all the way down to, 10 machine manufacturers. Jerry, I don't know if you guys also work with some machine shops too, or if
Yeah, we
that's just
definitely
kind of
do. We definitely do work with machine shops, but like I said, we work with all different types of manufacturers across all different industries. And so, if they're tracking parts or tracking goods, it's a fit.
Yeah, got it. Let's see. Lou, question for you. Does MachineMetrics collect energy data as well, as well as production data?
Yeah, I'd say for about a third of our machines, maybe we collect what you might refer to as energy data. Basically, that is going to be current transducer data that either stands in place of or is supplemental to the control data. So what you're going to get from that is the amount of amperage that's drawn by the machine on a usually like 10 to 20 hertz basis. So you could get a pretty detailed view of energy usage if you're a shop and you're trying to, if you have variable pricing for your electricity, you could optimize your operations that way if you know how much you're using every hour.
Got it. Jerry, question for you. Big Finish. I know you're prepped for this one. Questions around on-prem and the cloud. What are the pros and cons between on-prem and the cloud? This will be our last question. You guys will both have a chance to answer, starting with Jerry.
All right. So I'll say the main advantage, obviously I don't even really consider this as much of an advantage anymore, of having your data on premise, is that the data is there. I know manufacturers, they are practical, pragmatic people. They make parts. They like to touch things, right? So I have my data there on the server. I can see the lights blinking. It makes me feel good. But I think that's in the past. I think the best way to store your data is in the cloud. And there's a number of reasons for that. I jotted down 4 of them. We could go on, and I'm sure there's many more. I know there's many more. One of them is economies of scale. As we develop software for our customers, what we develop is actually used by all of our customers. So we don't have to make individual deployments and changes for all of our individual customers. So as we build software, all of our customers are running that same set of code and on the same data structure, so they can take advantage of that around the world, which leads to some real economies of scale and some savings that we can pass on to our customers. There's predictable cost when you're in the cloud, because you're almost always using a subscription-based method of payment. So these are predictable costs that are hitting your operational budget instead of your capital budget, which accountants like, because they can plan on that expenditure that happens month after month or year after year. You don't need a huge IT department usually, because we handle that. We are experts in security and governance and ITAR. And so those are our core competencies. So that allows our manufacturing customers to focus on what they do best, which is making parts. And we can augment them. And there's many more, but I'll run out of time. So that's 3 main ones that I got.
Yeah, I totally agree with Jerry. I would just say one of the things that actually became increasingly evident because of the pandemic is the importance of remote deployments. So, it's people, especially larger companies, now have protocols against allowing too many people on the factory floor, whether it be their own employees or external vendors. And if you have a cloud solution, so you have that green MachineMetrics box, we can deploy over-the-air software updates, just like you can get on modern cars like a Tesla or any other cloud connected vehicle. So instead of going to the automotive dealer because you have a recall, oftentimes these manufacturers will just deploy something over the air and you never have to go anywhere. Similar to that, we actually deployed a solution that allowed a manufacturer to reduce their scrap by 95%. We basically were able to stop their machines remotely and autonomously, so based off of a certain trigger. instead of breaking their tool and making a bunch of scrap parts and costing them a whole bunch of money, this machine now just stops before any of that happens. And we never went on site to install that. So, you can imagine the scalability of this on our side, but you can also imagine how important it is during a pandemic, especially if cases are spiking, that you don't need to drive or fly to somebody's machine shop in order to install solutions like these. So, this pandemic, I think, is a very stark reminder of the advantages of cloud over on-prem.
I'm sorry, I got to jump in real quick. I know I already used my time up, but I can't believe Lou, what Lou said, just it triggered one of the biggest advantages for our customers was during the pandemic, not just the remote access and automation that can happen, but just the visibility. Our customers who had were in the cloud, when this pandemic hit, they hardly missed a beat when they sent almost everyone home except their core workers on the line, as opposed to our customers who are using other third-party packages that are on-prem. It was like they went dark. They had no idea what was going on. So absolutely huge.
Yeah. No, you're so right. We had a number of webinars around that earlier this year. And so, so if anybody wants to have any other questions or if there's anything else that comes up afterwards, I think we'll be able to send out the contact information with both of our panelists today, as well as a recording of today's event. This was another great event in a series of great events. Jerry, thank you so much for participating. Lou, of course, thank you so much for participating. For those of you that are still here and have stayed to the end, thank you so much, and we'll see you for the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.